Joining us now, also in Philadelphia for the Democratic National Convention from Washington, D.C., like ourselves, is Bo Shuff. Bo, we know him well through Netroots Nation and through his work as Director of Advocacy for DC Votes, which can be found, let me see if my memory serves, dcvotes.org, right?
Yes, just dcvote.org.
dcvote.org.
Yep.
So, Bo, thanks for coming on the program.
I think I'm going to now buy dcvotes.org and just redirect it. I think that
You
would
should.
I
think that would
should,
be good because you guys
yeah.
are DC Vote, but DC
Right.
Votes would be good, and I called it DC Votes, which, given my enormous reach, means that that's everybody's going to think that's what it is now.
There we go.
Anyway, thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
So listen, your organization's mission is?
Our organization's mission is full equality for the residents of the District of Columbia. A lot of times that conversation has been around budget autonomy, legislative autonomy, control over our own finances, but really it also is up to now and including statehood. That conversation has advanced, and now the conversation within the city is really about the fact that DC should be a state, and the 51st state at that.
Okay, and listen, I totally get it. I mean, I don't know, is there, in fact, let me ask you this because you do this for a living, is there any other group of American citizens anywhere in the country who, based solely on geography, have no member of Congress, voting member of Congress, and have no senators?
No, the closest parallel is Puerto Rico. They're a territory. They don't pay federal taxes. They exist in a different state than the district does, a different state of being, not state.
Right.
Than the district does. We are the only place that are full U.S. citizens like Puerto Ricans are, but we also pay federal taxes. We are, have all of the rights and responsibilities that come along with it, but we don't have any representation in the body that oversees us.
And for those of the folks listening who may never have been to D.C. or seen a Washington, D.C. automobile, our license plates say what?
Taxation without representation, that's right.
Taxation without representation, which gets me to my next point. As you advocate for D.C. statehood and full citizenship rights for D.C., why aren't, I mean, I know the answer to it, but why wouldn't conservatives be on board with this, given that they're supposed to be big on no taxation without representation?
That's right. It absolutely is a local control issue. It is a small government issue. It is a taxation without representation issue. All of the stalwarts that we hear out of the Republican platform, out of the conservative platform, are, and so usually the honest answer is politics, is
right.
that the district votes relatively heavily Democratic.
Right.
And there is some concern that it would produce 2 additional Democratic senators and a now voting Democratic member. We have a delegate. Eleanor Holmes Norton is phenomenal and has worked heavily for the rights of the district, but she doesn't have a vote.
Right.
And so they're worried about that vote math.
Right.
And that's usually the summation of it all. There's other arguments sometimes that relate to the way that the district was established within the Constitution, but really it comes down to politics.
So we're talking with Bo Shuff, Director of Advocacy for dcvote.org, for DC Vote. And it's time for the geography quiz portion of the interview.
Oh, boy.
What's the population of DC?
Around 670,000.
And what's the population of Rhode Island?
Rhode Island is slightly larger than us.
Okay. I thought they were.
Vermont and North Dakota are smaller than us.
Okay.
The 2 that are smaller.
So there are at least 2 states smaller than us.
That's correct.
Rhode Island is in the ballpark. Wyoming, maybe a little bit, maybe 20% more, something like that.
Yep, and most of the population right now is based on estimates. We do know that we're getting new residents all the time. We're expected to be at 800,000 in the next 10 years. So DC continues to grow, as anybody who lives there is well aware.
Yeah, as anyone who's been to some of the neighborhoods that were basically warehouses a few years ago,
That's
and now they're
exactly
high-rises.
where I live.
Yeah. Oh, you do? Oh, convenient for baseball games. All right, we're talking with Bo Shuff of DC Vote. So we know that there are political reasons.
Yes.
Okay, why? So let's talk process for a second. What would it take to get full citizenship rights for DC? 2 senators, voting member of Congress. What would need to happen?
On the surface, it's a very simple process. We as a residency, as a territory, or as a district, will say we want to be a vote. Well, I'm sorry, we want to be a state. And we're going to do that this November. There's going to be a referendum on the ballot this November that answers that exact question. We want to be a state. These are the definitions of our state by geography. This is the Constitution we want to live under, and we want it to be a representative form of government. At that point, that package gets sent down Pennsylvania Avenue from the Wilson Building to the Capitol building, where it simply takes a vote of Congress. There's a lot of misinformation about how states are admitted, and the majority of them in the recent times have been done simply by an act of Congress. Hawaii, Alaska, a package of states, including Arizona and New Mexico before that. It's a simple process if the Congress is willing to go with us.
And of course, so we know that the Republicans are going to be opposed to that for, as you say, political reasons. But how are the Democrats on this issue? I mean, presumably, if only for reasons of self-interest, the Democratic Party would support this, as well as on moral principle. Is that, in fact, the party's position?
It's interesting. It's a nonpartisan issue. There are definitely people on the conservative side that have been supportive for exactly the reasons we talked about: small government, local interference. And there are Democrats who have been opposed to it for constitutional reasons, for competitive reasons. States are worried about getting equal resources based on statehood. But the core of the two parties became very clear last week when we saw the Republican platform get voted on in Cleveland, and then crystallized yesterday when the Democratic platform was voted on here in Philadelphia. The Republicans not only don't think that D.C. should be a state, according to their platform, but they attacked the city council and the present mayor for the actions that they've taken to move towards autonomy. They've want to roll back different laws that we've had over the course of time: needle exchange, choice issues, marriage issues. Right now, Senator Lee of Utah is messing with our occupational safety and health responsibilities. And the Democratic platform, on the other hand, for the first time since 2 times ago, so 2004, has readopted statehood as a plank in the platform. They are fully supportive of statehood.
You know what amazes me, especially now that I'm back in D.C., about the Republican attitude towards D.C. is not only that they're so interested in pursuing and continuing taxation without representation, but that they also want to rule D.C., it seems to me,
That's exactly
now
right.
that they control Congress, in such an undemocratic and autocratic way. They want to tell us how to control our local affairs from the very pinnacle of federal power itself, which seems to me the total contradiction of what they say they believe in.
That's right. We have 548 city council people. We have the 13 that we elected that should be the ones making the decisions about our laws. And we have 535 down at the other end of Pennsylvania who like to mess with us and do their own thing. And they have the ability, and I think this is something that progressives don't know necessarily, and that the greater country doesn't know. The Congress has the ability to overturn anything we pass. If we pass a law through our council or at the ballot box, the Congress can just simply come in and veto that, basically, overturn our own control. Not only that, they can stymie our efforts by simply saying, no, you can't pay for that. You can't spend tax money on that, even if it's our own money that we pay to the state or federal level.
So it's even worse than it sounds. And we're talking with Bo Shuff, Director of Advocacy of DCVote.org. The website is DCVote.org. It's even worse than it sounds, because not only are we taxed without representation at the federal level,
That's right.
but we lack the ability even to democratically govern our own city, which,
That's right.
except for the emergency manager law in Michigan and a few other places, every other city
Which everybody loves.
Right, yeah, of course,
right,
yeah.
That's been really effective.
Yeah, that's worked out great for the people of
yeah.
Flint. Yeah. So so we know that this is me, not you, since you're a director of advocacy. We know the Republicans are complete hypocrites and autocrats and horrible about that, and only interested in pursuing their own power and their own control at the expense of democracy when it comes to Washington, D.C. So D.C. autonomy is now back in the Democratic platform.
Autonomy has always been there at different levels: voting autonomy, budget autonomy. They went one step further and went for full D.C. statehood in this platform. A lot of work went into that. Advocates from the city and from around the country. We saw it show up in the Iowa caucus. They put it in their platform to support D.C. statehood at the state level. So advocates around the country are working hard on it. We've got groups and legislators working at the National Conference of State Legislatures to try and work on it there. So it's been a lot of work, but we had success this year.
So we have D.C. statehood for the first time in the Democratic platform. How hard do you think they'll work for it? I mean, you and I know that it's great when something gets in the platform, because that means it's becoming part of the political dialogue. And
Sure.
It's the Overton window, as they call it. It's in there now. But in order to make something happen, you also want to see the party talking about it, pushing
Yes.
for it, advocating for it. How strongly do you think Democrats will be fighting for that?
I think that's one of the reasons why DC Vote exists and why we're looking for support from all over the country, is that this is an issue, again, that I think the majority of people aren't educated completely on. They don't know all of the issue and they don't know the nuance. And most importantly, they don't know how it affects residents of the district on a day-to-day basis. And we're going to go out and tell those stories and to go with the latest catchphrase, try to humanize the issue so that people understand what this feels like, how to live in a space that has no identity, has an identity but has no representation. And that's what we're going to work on for the next foreseeable future.
All right. Well, that's certainly a cause we support and endorse, and we're glad to see you here, and we're glad to have you on the program. Bo Shuff, Director of Advocacy for DC Vote. You can find them at dcvote.org. Bo, thanks for coming on the program.
Thanks so much.